Prince William is in a private room at St. James's Palace, his forehead pressed against a cold window, completely breaking down in tears. And the reason why is far more complicated than just one bad night. It starts with his uncle, Earl Spencer, showing up at a private palace reception uninvited, walking straight past security and publicly confronting Queen Camilla over a piece of jewelry that belonged to Princess Diana. That's the moment that set everything in motion. And honestly, when you look at what was said versus what actually happened, the entire situation exposes a fracture in the royal family that no amount of carefully managed PR can repair. Earl Spencer pulls up to the private rear entrance of St. James's Palace at exactly 8:45 in the evening. The discreet black sedan, the dramatic arrival, everything about it feels deliberate. He doesn't have an official security clearance pass for the event. His name isn't on the master guest list managed by the Lord Chamberlain's office. But here's the thing about being. Before we reveal what happened next, hit subscribe and stay with us for more incredible royal stories. Being a peer of the realm with deep historical ties to the estate, you can move past outer perimeter checkpoints without immediately raising alarms, especially when the guards know exactly who you are and probably don't want to be the ones physically stopping Princess Diana's brother from entering the building. So, he gets in. The reception inside is exactly what you'd expect from palace diplomacy. King Charles stands near a grand fireplace speaking quietly with a European ambassador. Queen Camilla moves gracefully among dignitaries and art patrons. It's a cultural preservation initiative, strictly non-political, the kind of evening where the inner circle can relax away from the cameras. Then the double doors swing open, and Earl Spencer walks in. That carefully constructed atmosphere instantly shatters. What makes this different from ordinary royal family tension is that Earl Spencer doesn't follow protocol. He doesn't wait for a formal introduction. He doesn't quietly stand in a greeting line. Instead, he walks with unwavering purpose straight across the polished floorboards, ignoring stunned courtiers, and stops just 3 feet from Queen Camilla. The room falls into complete silence. Crystal glasses stop clinking. Everyone realizes they are witnessing an open and deeply hostile family confrontation, and nobody knows how to respond. The relationship between the main branch of the royal family and the Spencer family has been a minefield since 1997. Both sides agreed to maintain a polite, distant public image for Prince William and Prince Harry's sake. But Earl Spencer's forceful entrance proves that the emotional wounds surrounding his sister's legacy remain far from healed. The specific catalyst is where this becomes even more compelling. Spencer isn't known for reckless or impulsive outbursts. His previous actions have always been carefully measured for maximum legal and media impact. So, when he stands before Camilla, slowly raises a single gloved hand, and points directly at her left lapel, he's not simply creating a scene, he's making a calculated statement. He demands an immediate explanation for why a highly sentimental piece of private family history is being openly displayed at a public state function without the express written consent of the Spencer estate trustees. The object in question is a unique diamond and sapphire brooch that originally belonged to the Spencer family archives before being gifted to Diana on her wedding day in 1981. This piece was a cornerstone of the late princess's personal collection, a symbol of her maternal heritage that she wore during multiple high-profile international engagements. After her passing, the legal ownership of her personal effects was divided under a complex network of private trusts. This created a significant legal grey area regarding which items permanently belonged to the crown and which pieces remained exclusively tied to her biological descendants. So, when Earl Spencer sees Camilla wearing this brooch, he isn't simply seeing jewelry. He's witnessing what he believes is a violation of his sister's legacy and his family's property rights. The tension reaches a breaking point as King Charles steps forward to intervene between his wife and his former brother-in-law. His personal security team immediately moves in to surround the group, attempting to create a physical barrier to shield the remaining guests and prevent anyone from capturing the heated confrontation on their phones. Charles insists the conversation be moved immediately into a private office upstairs, but Spencer refuses to back down. He states clearly that if the palace chooses to display private family property in public, they should also be prepared to defend that decision in front of the entire court. That open defiance introduces another mystery that may prove even more damaging than the confrontation itself. The guest list for this reception had been finalized 3 weeks earlier. Every invitation card was encoded with an individual digital signature to prevent unauthorized duplication or transfer. For Earl Spencer to know the exact time, location, and even the wardrobe details of the event, he would have needed information from someone working directly within the Central Palace Secretariat. The realization that a senior staff member may have been coordinating with the Spencer family sends shockwaves through the king's inner circle. It exposes what appears to be a major vulnerability at the very heart of the royal household's operational security. Someone inside the palace wanted this confrontation to happen, or at the very least wanted Spencer to have the information he needed to make it happen. As the security team finally manages to guide Earl Spencer toward a quiet exit corridor, the true emotional cost begins to unfold. Prince William had stood completely frozen just a few feet away throughout the entire exchange, watching his mother's brother openly confront his stepmother while his father struggled to maintain his composure. The sudden, brutal collision of his childhood trauma with his modern royal duties proves completely overwhelming. Without saying a single word to his father or the remaining guests, William turns on his heel and walks swiftly out of the room through a side door leading to the private state apartments. This is where the story shifts from a family confrontation to something far more personal. The heavy mahogany door of the private anteroom clicks shut with a sharp, echoing snap, cutting off the distant, anxious hum of the disrupted reception below. Prince William walks silently toward the tall sash window overlooking the darkened courtyard. His hands are trembling as he reaches for the brass window latch. He leans his forehead against the cold, damp glass pane, staring out into the empty London night. The stoic, unyielding armor he spent nearly 30 years meticulously building disappears completely within the span of a single breath. The Prince of Wales quietly breaks down in tears, completely alone in the dim light of the palace apartment. That image matters because it highlights the agonizing dual reality William has been forced to navigate since the summer of 1997. To the global public, he is the ultimate symbol of royal stability, a steady modern leader who approaches state duties with calm, clinical precision. Beneath that carefully crafted public image sits a man deeply scarred by the toxic public collapse of his parents' marriage and the tragic, premature loss of his mother. By forcing Princess Diana's brother and Queen Camilla into an open, aggressive confrontation over a piece of personal jewelry, the ambush ripped away decades of psychological scar tissue, dragging William straight back to the most terrifying moments of his teenage years. The tension escalates rapidly as the king's senior private secretary arrives outside the anteroom door, carrying a secure internal briefing folder. The official knocks softly, hesitant to intrude upon the heir's rare moment of vulnerability. But the administrative crisis building downstairs demands immediate executive direction. King Charles has ordered an instant lockdown of the event's communication logs, but the palace staff is completely paralyzed, terrified to act without knowing where the future king stands on the dispute. William does not answer the door. He remains in the shadows of the window frame, struggling to regain control of his voice before facing the bureaucratic machinery of the crown. The sudden emotional withdrawal introduces a massive, highly sensitive mystery into the center of the household's operational command. For several years, William has maintained a strict professional working relationship with his stepmother, recognizing her vital role in supporting his father through the immense demands of the modern throne. He consistently supported Camilla during major family transitions, even backing her elevation to queen consort during the final months of the late queen's reign. So why does the sight of his uncle confronting her cause him to retreat in absolute distress rather than stepping forward to defend the current queen from a public insult? The answer to this psychological riddle lies buried within a secret pact William made with his uncle, Earl Spencer, during a private gathering at Althorpe House in the summer of 2024. The Prince of Wales quietly assured his mother's family that while he would always respect the official hierarchy of the current reign, he would never allow Diana's private sentimental artifacts to become part of Camilla's public wardrobe. When he walked into the reception room and saw his stepmother wearing the unique wedding brooch, William felt completely blindsided by his own staff's oversight. He realized the palace's styling team had inadvertently violated his private promise to the Spencers, making an explosive family confrontation almost inevitable. That timeline simply doesn't add up if you assume everyone was on the same page. They clearly weren't. The situation grows even more critical when Charles's personal equerry bypasses the security locks to deliver a direct handwritten note from the king. The message, written in the sovereign's characteristic fountain pen script, demands William's immediate return to the drawing room to present a united family front before the remaining foreign dignitaries are officially dismissed. The king is absolutely furious about the security breach and wants his son to stand shoulder to shoulder with Camilla, signaling to the watching diplomats that the crown will not be intimidated by the rogue actions of an angry peer. William reads the short note under the dim glow of the desk lamp, and his expression hardens as the initial wave of grief transforms into cold, protective determination. He flatly refuses to return to the reception hall, telling the equerry to inform the king that he will not participate in a staged display of family harmony while his mother's memory is being weaponized for a palace public relations strategy. That blunt refusal represents a monumental, unprecedented act of defiance against his father's immediate authority. It opens a dangerous structural rift between the office of the Prince of Wales and the office of the king, one that threatens to undermine the administration's long-term planning. The mystery of how the palace would manage this deep internal rebellion intensifies when Kensington Palace's personal digital communications team detects an unusual surge in encryption activity originating from Earl Spencer's legal advisors. The Spencers are not retreating to Northamptonshire to let the matter settle quietly. They are already drafting a formal statement for the press, prepared to explain the exact historical provenance of the disputed brooch if the palace attempts to dismiss the evening's incident as a minor scheduling mistake. William realizes his father's policy of absolute stoic silence will be completely ineffective against an aristocratic family that possesses a global media platform and a deep, multi-generational grievance against the court. By 11 o'clock that night, the anteroom has transformed into a temporary command post for William's most trusted personal advisors. They gather around the low coffee table, methodically reviewing the original inventory lists from the 1997 Royal Probate Registries to determine the precise legal status of the sapphire jewellery pieces. The Prince of Wales has completely regained his composure. His eyes remain slightly red from the initial shock, but his demeanour is now entirely focused on strategic containment. He knows that if this specific property dispute enters the public domain, it will trigger a massive, uncontrollable wave of media speculation that could permanently damage both his father's fragile health recovery and his daughter, Princess Charlotte's, future inheritance options. The final realization of the long, exhausting evening is that the traditional boundaries of family loyalty have been completely obliterated by the Althorpe ambush. William can no longer rely on the old, comfortable assumption that his dual roles as a devoted son and a determined guardian of his mother's legacy can exist in perfect harmony. The lines have been drawn in the middle of a palace ballroom, and the future king is left to navigate a fractured, high-stakes emotional landscape where every single decision carries the potential to trigger an all-out civil war within the modern House of Windsor. Meanwhile, a tense silence grips the private study at Clarence House at exactly 2 a.m. King Charles paces the floor, his face etched with fatigue and frustration as he listens to a direct briefing from his senior personal protection officer. On his desk sits a secure tablet displaying the internal security logs from the chaotic reception. His stepmother's crown property dispute had already become a massive administrative headache, but this public security breach is an institutional disaster. The king stops pacing, looks down at his desk, and demands an immediate, comprehensive explanation for how Earl Spencer managed to breach his private perimeter. The king finds himself completely caught in the middle of a brutal, multi-layered dilemma. His current medical recovery requires absolute calm, yet his former brother-in-law has just launched an aggressive domestic confrontation right in front of his diplomatic guests. Charles has to balance his instinct to defend Queen Camilla, who was publicly humiliated under his watch, against the fragile emotional state of his son, Prince William. He knows that if he pushes too hard for aggressive legal retaliation against the Spencer family, he risks permanently damaging his relationship with the Prince of Wales, who has already retreated into cold, defensive silence. The immediate mystery surrounding the confrontation shifts from a security breakdown to a technical failure within the palace's own clothing department. The king's chief of staff spends the early morning hours investigating how the controversial diamond and sapphire brooch ended up pinned to the queen's lapel in the first place. The investigators discover that the royal styling team relied on an outdated inventory database last updated in 2005. They completely overlooked a highly sensitive, unredacted legal memorandum from 1996 that restricted the public display of certain wedding gifts connected to the Spencer family. This administrative discovery does little to calm the king's growing anger. Charles realizes that while the mistake may have been technical, the public relations fallout is entirely political. The British media landscape is already saturated with commentary regarding the historical treatment of Princess Diana. And this sudden public confrontation threatens to undo years of careful reputation management. The King's personal advisors from the Privy Council warn him that any public statement or legal counterattack will only invite even greater scrutiny into the family's private financial records and jewelry vaults, a scenario the Treasury Department is desperate to avoid. The mystery surrounding the King's next move deepens when his communications director presents an emergency media monitoring report. Several high-profile news outlets in London are already preparing morning segments on the confrontation, having received anonymous tips detailing William's emotional exit from the ballroom. Charles knows he cannot afford to let the press portray this incident as evidence of permanent structural instability within the core leadership team. He needs an immediate united response, but his son is completely refusing to answer the internal palace telephone lines. The King chooses to manage the crisis by asserting his ultimate authority over the household's operational scheduling. He bypasses his regular council of advisors and issues a direct executive instruction to the royal diary coordinators. He orders a major, immediate revision to the upcoming autumn calendar, completely separating the public appearance schedules of the Queen and the Prince of Wales for the next 90 days. This decisive administrative move is designed to give William the emotional distance he requires to process the trauma of the ambush while ensuring Camilla can continue her state duties without facing another unexpected family confrontation. With the immediate calendar changes finalized, Charles turns his attention to containing the legal threats coming from the Spencer estate attorneys. He knows the Earl is fully prepared to escalate the dispute to an open tribunal if the brooch is not removed from the Crown collection immediately. The King quietly authorizes his personal solicitors to sign a formal temporary waiver transferring physical custody of the disputed artifact back to a secure holding vault managed by a private bank in London. It is a pragmatic, quiet surrender designed to protect the Crown's wider operational security, but it leaves a bitter sense of defeat inside the private quarters of Clarence House. The long, exhausting night concludes with a quiet confrontation between the King and his senior security detail. Charles makes it absolutely clear that any future breakdown in protocol will result in an immediate restructuring of the protection teams. He has successfully contained the immediate crisis through strategic compromises and diary changes, but the domestic peace of his reign has been permanently shaken. The traditional power structures of the court are being constantly challenged by historic family resentments, leaving the King to govern his fractured household with a heavy sense of isolation that no royal decree can truly erase. Then comes the formal legal packet from Spencer and Associates, arriving at the Buckingham Palace registry desk at precisely 9 the following morning. The document package is marked for the immediate personal attention of the King's chief solicitor. It contains comprehensive, uncompromising demands backed by independent constitutional case law. Princess Diana's maternal family is not satisfied with a mere verbal apology from the palace styling team. They issue a strict 72-hour deadline for the permanent legal removal of the diamond and sapphire wedding brooch from the royal collection registries. The intense pressure behind this legal ultimatum highlights the changing balance between traditional Crown authority and the historic aristocratic families of Great Britain. For generations, the peerage typically deferred to the sovereign on matters of property and dress, preferring to settle domestic disagreements through quiet, unrecorded compromises behind closed doors. However, the legal trustees of the Althorp House estate are operating under a completely different modern philosophy. They view the unauthorized public display of their family's historic heirloom as a direct violation of explicit trust agreements signed during the 1996 divorce settlements. The tension within the palace legal department reaches its peak as the solicitors cross-reference the Spencer demands with a series of historic statutes governing private inheritances within the British peerage. Earl Spencer's lawyers include a specific clause referencing the Hereditary Artifacts Protection Act, legislation that protects ancient family treasures from being permanently absorbed into the Crown during times of marital transition. If the palace chooses to ignore the 72-hour deadline, the Spencer trustees are fully prepared to file an immediate public petition in the High Court. Such an action would trigger an unprecedented judicial review of the Crown's private jewelry acquisition policies. The immediate mystery that leaves the royal advisors deeply unsettled is how Prince William will react to this official legal challenge against his father's household. As the future king and a core beneficiary of his mother's private trust, William holds a unique dual position that could ultimately determine the outcome of the entire dispute. The outcome of the dispute now rests on Prince William's decision. If he chooses to back his father's lawyers, the palace could potentially tie the Spencer trustees up in prolonged legal maneuvers for years. However, if the Prince of Wales maintains his stance of defensive neutrality, the Crown's legal defense will collapse completely due to a lack of family unity. The mystery surrounding William's next strategic move is resolved during a private closed-door consultation with his personal legal advisors at Kensington Palace. The prince makes it absolutely clear that he will not authorize a single penny of his estate's resources to be used in a legal battle against his mother's family. He instructs his solicitors to draft a separate independent memorandum confirming that his office fully supports a clean, permanent separation of the disputed Spencer artifacts from the general crown wardrobe. This internal decision completely dismantles the palace's defensive strategy, forcing the king's advisors to abandon any plans for a legal counterstrike. Faced with total non-cooperation from the heir to the throne, King Charles moves swiftly to contain the institutional damage before the 72-hour deadline expires. He signs a formal executive release order authorizing the immediate and permanent transfer of both the physical and legal custody of the brooch back to the Spencer estate trustees to prevent a public media spectacle at the palace gates. The transfer is carried out under the cover of night, with a secure courier vehicle delivering the jewelry piece directly to a neutral high-security banking facility in the City of London. The ultimatum has been met, but the tactical surrender leaves an undeniable and permanent fracture at the highest levels of the royal household's administrative command. The final adjustments to the official royal calendar are uploaded to the Central Palace database by Friday afternoon, cementing a lasting structural divide between the court and the Spencer family. The new schedules confirm that all joint public appearances involving the Queen Consort and the Prince of Wales have been removed from the autumn diary. The palace communications team no longer attempts to project an image of seamless family harmony to the international press, choosing instead to manage the family's deep internal divide through a policy of complete physical separation. The reality of this new power dynamic transforms the emotional landscape of the House of Windsor. Queen Camilla quietly withdraws several other historic pieces from her active jewelry rotation, choosing to rely strictly on modern, uncontested items to avoid triggering another unexpected confrontation with aristocratic factions. Her inner circle views the entire episode as a permanent tactical setback, recognizing that despite her high official status as the king's wife, certain chapters of the family's history will remain forever beyond her influence. The true resolution of the entire crisis, however, takes place far from the public eye within the quiet private grounds of Windsor Great Park. William arranges a completely unannounced meeting with his uncle, Earl Spencer, to finalize a private family pact that will ensure long-term peace between their respective houses. The Prince of Wales brings no official palace advisors or communication staff to the meeting, choosing instead to handle the final arrangements surrounding his mother's legacy as a private family matter. During this quiet summit, William secures a binding personal agreement with Earl Spencer regarding the long-term destination of the disputed diamond and sapphire wedding brooch. Rather than allowing the piece to remain indefinitely in a dark underground banking vault, the Spencer trustees agree to formally register the artifact as a future personal inheritance for Princess Charlotte. The paperwork is structured so that the jewelry will bypass the central crown collection entirely, transferring directly to the young princess when she reaches her 18th birthday, ensuring it remains firmly within the direct biological line of Diana's descendants. This masterstroke of family diplomacy achieves exactly what the palace's legal team could not. It successfully satisfies the Spencer family's determination to protect their historical legacy while simultaneously ensuring that a priceless piece of royal history will eventually return to the direct line of succession without triggering an expensive public high court battle. William has successfully used his independent legal authority to heal a dangerous institutional wound, proving to both his father and the watching courtiers that he is fully capable of managing the family's most sensitive crises with unwavering resolve and exceptional legal precision. As the autumn mist settles over the long walk at Windsor, the immediate media storm surrounding the Althorp ambush finally begins to fade from the front pages of the morning newspapers. The rooms at St. James's Palace return to their familiar, carefully scripted stillness, but the traditional power dynamics of the court have been permanently reshaped by a single week of high-stakes domestic conflict. The lines have been drawn. The legal covenants are securely registered, and the future king is left to navigate his fractured household with a newfound independence that will forever shape the trajectory of his reign. The brooch will wait in a secure vault until Princess Charlotte turns 18, a quiet symbol of a promise kept between a nephew and his uncle, and a reminder that some family wounds never fully heal, no matter how many palace doors are closed.